Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back for another week of Bioactive Live, where we're trying to answer your questions, connect with you guys, and kind of give you some information on a more consumable level. So, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And this week we have a pretty cool guest, a guy that's doing something that not a lot of people are doing around the country here, and he's doing it at a higher level, which I'm really excited to hear more about. And that's Andrew here with from Biotactics. Welcome to the show, Andrew. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about Biotactics?
Uh, Mark, thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be able to share what I do with your audience. Um, we're an insectary that we focus on predatory mites, and it's kind of the opposite of what I went to school for. I went to college for chemistry, and then now uh, gone against chemicals as much as possible. But Biotactics has been around since 1972. It was actually founded in response to that book Silent Spring that came out that got DDT banned. Um, there was two entomologists from UC Riverside that founded it and used some of their research to build products. And my family got, or my dad was hired in 2002, and then my mom was hired right after that. And I started working with the company after the founders gave my parents the company with the debt and everything, because they were tired of trying, and they were like 75. And in 2006, my dad and I figured out this new way to rear predatory mites. And he's the one that implemented it and stuff, and then I figured out how to make it reliable and predictable. And my dad retired in 2013. I took over in 2014, and I've grown ever since, except for in 2021. Almost lost everything, but that's a totally different story.
So, Andrew, I did a pretty poor job introducing you. I apologize because the we talk a lot about beneficials on this show, and we've been talking a lot about outdoor beneficials, and a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
conversation revolving around outdoor beneficials is like ladybugs and green lacewings and assassin bugs and stuff, predatory wasps and stuff like that. And our whole approach on this show with those species is instead of trying to like buy sachets or purchase a product and put them in your garden, especially not indoors, because we know indoors that they just don't have anything to feed on. They just aren't effective. If you might disagree with that sentiment, maybe not, but the point I'm trying to make is that the predatory mites that Andrew's speaking of are the ones that actually do work, right? The ones that are have a very
Yeah.
very heavy use commercially, scientifically proven to actually work. And the ones we're specifically talking about that Andrew rears at Biotactics, that we at MI Beneficials actually carry his offerings because he does offer the best of these, and we'll get more into that. But we're talking about Californicus, we're talking about Fallacis mites, Occidentalis, Galendromus Occidentalis mites, and Persimilis mites.
Mm-hmm.
And so those four offerings, to me, are going to be the heavy hitters across a lot of different environments. It seems like your prescribed use of these things varies based on environment. Um,
Yes.
so I guess like I guess why don't you give us an overview of those mites that you offer and kind of
Okay.
where they apply best for people maybe in different climates.
Maybe the
Well,
common thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's Californicus, uh, Fallacis, which is kind of, so if Californicus is native to Southern California, so it likes warm and drier uh, environments, and then Fallacis is kind of like Northern Californicus. It's native to Northern California and Oregon, so it likes cooler, more humid environments. But it has the same prey palette, so it eats the same pest mites, um, but it can handle a lower temperature. So, but they hunt the exact same. And then there's Galendromus occidentalis. We call them oxys. Uh, that's native to the California Central Valley, and there's only one species of predator in the world that can handle the 110, 115 degrees found in the summer in the California Central Valley, and that's the Occidentalis. And but spider mites love it. So in all that agriculture, I think there was like 1.2 million acres of almonds. Um, None of the chemicals really worked because it would burn the leaves, and uh, until I showed them Occidentalis, they couldn't use any biologicals either. Um, and then there is Persimilis, which is the most widely used predatory mite in the world, um, but it only eats webbing spider mites, like two spot and Pacific mite, and but it's native to tropical regions. Like it was discovered when it came in from Costa Rica on a shipment of oranges. So it's native to tropical regions, so it doesn't really work well outdoors in California or really anywhere in the summer, aside from Florida. So, what was your question?
No, that was the question. Was just give us the rundown of those mites. That's a really good kind of bio of those four. So sounds like they all kind of require different environments. So like the burning question for me obviously is like how do you actually rear these things? What are you feeding them?
We raise ours on spider mite eggs. Uh, so there's like in the commercial insectary industry, which there's only like five major ones now, and they're all based in Europe. Um, there's one way to rear Persimilis, which starves the Persimilis off of plants. Like they inoculate uh, bean plants with spider mites, and then they put Persimilis on the bean plants. They eat them up, and then climb. They hunt upwards, like reliably. So they hunt upwards, and then they get stuck in like this plastic chamber, and then every day someone goes around and gets all the stuck Persimilis, and then ships them across the ocean through customs, all that stuff. But they were already hungry to begin with, and there's a difference between hungry and starving. When when predators go without food, specifically Persimilis, for 3 to 5 days, which is like the typical time frame between harvest and actually getting released on the plants. Um, Sometimes it can be up to like 10 days. Once they don't get food for a certain amount of time, then they stop laying eggs. And if they can't lay eggs, they can't, then they don't eat. And predator eggs are like well over half the size of their entire abdomen, and they can lay up to 5 eggs per day. So in order to eat that much, they have to, in order to lay all those eggs, they have to eat a ton. But if they can't lay eggs, then they don't eat. So uh, then you got to buy more and more.
So
So they
it essentially stops their life cycle from that time frame because a lot of these being shipped overseas, that 3 to 5 days is probably the quickest they can possibly get it to you.
yep,
Um, so sounds like that's a pretty crucial 3 to 5 days of food loss.
yeah, and then there's all the other uh, species are reared the same way, just different food sources. They start with like bran or some vermiculite, and then they introduce mold spores, and then those develop mold mite populations. And then they bring in like they mix an old batch of the predators with their food source, and then they reproduce over like months. So Californicus, Swirsky, Andersoni, everything else except for Persimilis is raised on a type of mold mite. And when they're raised on mold mites, they start to adapt features that help them reproduce on mold mites. Like the whole culture adapts away from spider mite consumption, and then they end up losing their ability to lay eggs. Like they'll lay like one egg every other day instead of like 5 a day, and that means they're not eating very much. And then their mouth parts start to shrink, and then they also like the way that they hunt changes. If you've ever looked at like the inside of a sachet under a microscope, you see like these big, giant, like hairy, slow food mites in there, and they're so used to hunting those slow mites, they don't hunt like they should. And what I do, so the Persimilis rearing, instead of introducing predators onto the bean leaf plants, we just rear billions of spider mites, and then extract just the spider mite eggs, and then I feed them to the predators in the lab setting. And our cultures double every 24 hours, so they're always laying and reproducing, because young females are the ones you want. They're the ones that eat the most. So if you have a population of prey like broad mites, russet mites, spider mites, you want to essentially colonize your predator population in that area. But if they're not strong enough to reproduce, then you're not going to get rid of the pests.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about them adapting to they're basically becoming couch potatoes, because they're, if you think about the difference between a grain mite, which we've all seen in a living soil setting, they're those really bulbous, slow, like you can't even tell if they're alive or not. That's how slow they move, compared to a spider mite, which is pretty actively moving around up in a different region, usually of the entire grow. So, but when you think about it, they've been rearing these predatory mites that way
Thousands of generations.
generations on generations. So now we're not talking about a few months adaptation. You're talking about like a hardwired adaptation to being lazy predators. So I'm assuming
And
that's not how you raise your predators.
no, we raise them on in a lab setting with pure spider mite eggs, and we're the only ones in the world that can extract just spider mite eggs. And we do it in, I guess there would be one patent there, and then we could file another patent for what we do with the eggs, which it makes our Californicus work better than Persimilis on a spider mite population. But their Californicus are a lot more rugged, and they have a wider prey palette. Oh, the other thing, the food source in a certain population, if the food source is low or of really poor quality, then the predator eggs will hatch into more males. So instead of being over 3/4 female and then the rest male, it starts to go to like 50-50 or more males than females. And when, like with Persimilis, they get starved off the plant, that means the sex ratio is way off, and you end up getting more males, and they eat maybe 10-15% of what a female can, and ours are like 75-78%. So the peak biological capacity is what you get from us, and then everyone else is just trying to make money and sell more.
So let me ask you this then, because I've noticed. I mean, I've had people email me because our prices are, higher than what they're seeing on another site. And like even if you go to like an Arbico, not to call out anybody and whatever, saying nothing about their business whatsoever, but it's not clear because you go and you search Californicus on their website, you see some that are like you can get 10 sachets for $1. I don't know exactly what it costs, but then there's another one that's like $10 a sachet. It's like a huge difference. Is there anything about what you're talking about that has to do with that price difference?
Yeah, rearing predators on like the mold or grain mites, it's really cheap. So you can get 10 sachets, the breeding sachets. So after 8 weeks, you're supposed to get 250 predators out of that one sachet. Um, but I have never seen that many, even after like 8 weeks. So with Biotactics, you get the count that it claims, plus we do like a 30% overpack. So the value comes in from using less. So you get 250 predators out of one sachet, but you need 30 to do the same as 5,000 of ours, or 2,000 even.
That's interesting. So it seems like obviously the food source is really important. So getting the numbers that you need to be able to like fill, because you guys offer some big sachets for huge commercial customers. Um, how do you? Is it like a math? Is it basically like math? Like if you're giving them this much food, that you're gonna get about this much like predators out of it, or how does it? How do you get
Well,
those numbers?
we count the predators in the culture containers every day. So based on the count, we feed X grams. Um, we feed them every day, and based off those counts. So we use some organic corn grit and some other stuff in the cultured media. And what we do is take a 1 mil sample, count however many are in those, in that, and then do that 3 times per container, and then we can extrapolate that to the entire culture volume, and then that's how we know how many, like to put 1,000 in a bottle, or we put X milliliters in a bottle of 5,000 or whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's like a really good um it's a really good mathematical estimate basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, so which is truly amazing if you think about it, and having to do that count at a microscopic level, because a lot of these predators, or I mean most of them, you can't really see unless you have a really contrasting background. Like I've
yeah,
seen.
and
Yeah,
we have ways to make it a little easier that I'm not going to share publicly, and I'm working on this other one that could really revolutionize the entire system.
so yeah, like so when someone comes to you and says, I have this issue, where do you begin? Like, well, how do you diagnose the problem? I'm assuming you start with probably trying to figure out what that spider mite is, the exact pest. Is
Yeah,
that so important?
which pest? Yeah, because if someone has russet mites, they're going to need, uh, aside from the environment that you want to match to the predator, you have to go by the target pest. Um, so Californicus doesn't eat russet mites, but Occidentalis does. So if someone's growing cannabis or they have tomatoes and there are similar russet mites, then it doesn't matter. Uh, like the target pest is more important than the environment.
Yeah, because we talked about it before, and I say it wrong, and I apologize. It's the Midwest in me. Occidentalis. I'm
No,
gonna work on that.
nobody nobody says it right, so
Yeah,
it's
I could
fine.
see the pain in your eyes when I was introducing these. My Latin terminology is not so good. So, but we talked about it earlier. The Occidentalis, they thrive better in like a drier, hotter environment. So and that I think that's what
Yeah,
you're. So you're saying that like people even in like an indoor grow in the Midwest where we have more humidity, obviously, that those Occidentalis will still do work on russet mite because that's their
yeah.
target pest.
The humidity is more of a guide for a minimum. So uh, if you have 60, 80% humidity and you're above 70 degrees, the oxys will do serious work. Um, but within the plant canopy where the predators live, on the underside, that's where they hunt, uh, which is where the pests are because the leaves are usually softer, uh, the leaf tissue. Um, there's like a micro canopy, so the humidity is always going to be a little bit higher than what you read like outside of the um, like on the wall or wherever. Uh, but the the humidity more so has to do with the egg's ability to hatch. So they'll do work and they'll eat in 10% humidity, but if Occidentalis needs 35% or higher uh, to for their eggs to not shrivel up. And Persimilis
Gotcha.
needs 65% because it's native to warm, humid environments. Californicus needs 40. Um, Fallacis is about 62.
So you figure out what that pest is, and then from there, do you take a look at like the whole square footage of the greenhouse, or or the grow space, or like from where are you going?
Okay, so target pests. Um, and then we find out how bad it is. So what level of infestation and how much of the grow has it. Um, and with cannabis or different height uh, plants, uh, I go by off the cubic feet of foliage as opposed to square footage. Um, like in the rest of ag, square footage can be used to develop application rates because it's a uniform size usually. Like strawberries are all like the same size, but with cannabis they can be wildly different. So I that's where I go off of like X amount of predators for per cubic foot, and then we figure out the average height, average width, or if like they're in beds in rows. You could treat that as one big plant because they can share predators. And with the trellis helps too.
So, how do you like if you're diagnosing from afar, right? And so I apologize because I obviously knew the answer to that question. And when people call us too, same thing is we get that information from them. And Andrew has like a calculator basically where we can plug that information and actually find the foliar square footage or cubic inch, I guess is what it is, because we're talking
Yeah,
right. Yeah, so we're talking on much smaller scale. But I think that that's important because it can be a vast over diagnosis if you go from a square footage standpoint in a grow space. Um, and it can be an under prescription too, which can also be a waste of money if you're not handling the
yeah.
issue that you have. So, but I guess the question I have is, from afar, how do you get it?
Pictures. I,
Pick.
yeah, that's
Okay.
the best thing. I always ask for pictures or videos of the layout, and it is high as you can record, or take a picture so you can see the whole uh, room, and then or grow, and examples of the worst damage that they can find, and then the best damage and where that is in relation to doors or fans or um, potential sources of infestation or infection, essentially.
Super cool. And then figuring out it's basically just going from that, figuring out how bad the issue is, times how much cubic inch you have, and then
Right.
going from there. So it's really important though to back up it to figure out what that pest is, because I think it's funny you said that the most used biological control or predatory mite, I guess, would be the Persimilis, and it seems like it's in my experience in carrying and using your predators, it seems like it's kind of like the last resort. Um, uh,
Yeah,
Not to
it
downplay
used to
them.
be.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the best spider mite predator available until we started rearing our three other species on spider mites, and that really changes the game. Like our Californicus do as much as Persimilis out in the field, but our Persimilis do better than any other species that I've ever seen. But that matrix that I made, that only works with our predators. Um, you can't go off of starved Persimilis or factitious food uh, reared predators. You can't use the quantities that are that come up in the calculations with that one on breeding sachets and stuff like that.
So for those of you that are listening that have in the past tried predatories, um, and have kind of written them off as just they don't work, right? Consider the information that Andrew's sharing with you, but not even just as like a sale to himself. This is kind of like a representation of a lot of things you can buy in life. Just kind of the consumer market. But I think what's most important is figuring out what it is that those predators are eating. What kind of life are they living up to the point that they're going in your garden? And um, one thing that I've heard in the past, and I haven't had this as a complaint from any orders that we've received for predatory mites, but people who have scoped sachets in the past and have seen like actual spider mites, and I've actually seen posts online. I can't remember names, but people saying, you're putting spider mites into your garden, man, when you're putting these predatory species in. But what Andrew's saying is like you're feeding them eggs, so they're probably not even making it. Are they even making it through that hatch phase into an actual mite?
Rarely, but the way that we prep the mites before we send them out, uh, there's no food left in there.
So, but yeah, so even if there was, it's really it's like they're just ready to go, man. Like then and what are these things I think you might have already said it, but like what does a active female eat on a daily basis as far as pests go?
My Persimilis will eat 20 to 30 eggs per day and then lay 6 of their own eggs per day. So you get that population shift. As long as you start with enough, you're going to get the spider mites are going to go down and the Persimilis are going to go up. It's just how fast you need it to do it. But there is a minimum. And then all of our other 3 species, they'll eat between 20 and 25 per female. So I know exactly how many grams that is. So I feed that to 500,000.
So it truly is a numbers game. It boils down to numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why getting all that information is so important.
So I forgot what I was going to say. Okay. So in agriculture, like monocropping, they plow the field, strip it essentially, plant non-native crops in a non-native environment or in a non-native formation. Then they bring in, chemical fertilizers. I'm not talking about you guys, but and then they spray just to keep it clean. And what that does is make the pests are always going to come in first. So what we do is augment the native predator population that hasn't been that's probably been destroyed already from the spraying of predators, because there's native predators everywhere. What you're doing is balancing that insect or mite ecosystem that has been thrown off by years and years of monocropping.
How long does it? I mean, so we're shifting kind of out. This is probably talking more like the other sectors that you work in besides cannabis and like fruit trees. You said what was the one you said before? Nuts.
We do almonds. We do strawberries.
Almonds,
We do mint in Idaho and Washington and Oregon. There's only one species that works on mint plants because I think it has to do with the polyphenols with the mint that makes it minty. There's only one species that seems to work with that, and that's the Fallacis, and it just happens to be native to that area. So I don't know. Maybe mint was native up there to begin with.
So, and I mean, these are native species to a lot of those areas on the West Coast. When you see like a Midwest farm, do you look at it? Can the same thing happen? Because I know in nature, with that, if you stop spraying and reintroduce these things and get it going again, they'll start coming back year after year because that's what they're born to do.
Yeah,
and
and
same apply.
Fallacis seems to be more widely seen. Californicus and Fallacis in the Midwest and some of Texas because they overwinter better than Persimilis. They go into something called diapause, which is kind of like hibernation. Once it starts to get too cold for them, then they'll go down just in the top of dirt or in the bark of trees or like under leaves, and then they'll sleep until it warms up. So because you can kind of think of them as warm or cold-blooded. When it gets cold, they slow down and their metabolism goes down quite a bit. So but they're adapted to being outside. So if cold totally wipes them out, then there would only be predators for one summer.
So in like the really brutal cold areas, it has to be reintroduced, basically.
Not always, but usually you're going to have to bring in predators to keep up with the pests, because unless you're dealing with like a completely natural landscape, you're not going to get the same uh, ecosystem balance, food chain balance.
So, um, indoors, so that's kind of what happens outdoors. This is what they they fallacis. I'm saying that wrong.
Fallacis.
Fallacis.
That's right.
I got
Don't worry about
phallic things on the
it.
brain. Yeah. So when you're talking about like indoor with like someone growing in like a living soil environment, have you or like even like on a big commercial where they've got rows of 4x8 beds or whatever, but in an indoor setting, are you seeing people with success with Fallacis on a regenerative cycle?
Regenerative indoors. I don't know of many people that have that. Uh, there's a few people in Oklahoma um, that I met that do, and then there's some hybrid uh, greenhouses with uh, uh, like a living soil type setup. But if you're bringing in artificial conditions of any kind, then and you have a rotating crop, then you're gonna be losing some of the predators. So always good to bring in some, but uh, as early as possible. Um, like normally when they come out of the clones and they get planted in the teens, I guess. That I I tell people to do these things called clean sweeps. So you you can put out it probably like three releases throughout the whole cycle of almost the same number of predators, even though the plants get bigger. That's a cool picture. The you're just keeping them clean.
So, when you have people that have issues that are implementing your predators, um, are you is there like common issues or like um, mistakes that people make when they're implementing these things that they don't maybe didn't understand the first run around?
Oh, they I seem to get what what can I still spray, and it kind of defeats the purpose. But spraying and using biologicals is not like an additive result. Like you get, it diminishes the effectiveness of the predators. Um, that's one, and not like if they're fighting a an infestation of something, there are some sprays that will knock down like russets. Wettable sulfur kills the crap out of russets, um, but you can't use that, you know, in very often. And or like the quantity that they start with is not enough, or if the predators don't get to where they need to go, they're not going to uh, do their job. And so releases are really important, as well as finding the source of the infestation if you're not doing preventative releases.
Well, because at the end of the day, and I think it goes with basically all pests, is like the sooner you catch them, the cheaper it's gonna be to fix
Yeah,
with biological controls. Because if you're catching, like, I feel like the common people think of russet mites, right? And it's like a torch the whole thing kind of mentality, like just burn it all. But with russets, if you can catch them early enough, it's really not a kiss of death. And I think you're a huge advocate of that sentiment, aren't you, Andrew?
yeah. I think scouting is the most important thing a grower can do. aside from feeding the plants. Scouting is uh, the most cost-effective uh, use of your time. Like an hour of scouting a day can save you like thousands of dollars and yield.
Absolutely. And from a preventative standpoint, you mentioned it, like you have on a commercial size grow, obviously. It might not be economical on like a 4x4 tent in the basement, a hobbyist grower, to do a preventative, and maybe it is. And if that's your plan, I my hats are off to you, and you're doing it the absolute right way. Because if you do it early, you do it as a preventative, it's going to cost you far, far less than if you have a full outbreak, because now you need numbers to actually get you a viable yield. You need those plants back on track.
Uh, and yeah, like they never go off track, and so two of our species. Uh, so we mix the Occidentalis and Fallacis, and then Occidentalis and Californicus. We do a preventative release um, combo of those two, and one is the Fallacis and Oxys are better for veg because it's got it. The Fallacis can handle higher humidity, um, or you can do the Californicus and Oxy combo whenever you want, but you get protection from all different types of spider mites because there's a bunch of different types of webbing and non-webbing spider mites, um, and broad mites. And we've been having some really good results with against thrips uh, in orchards, at least. Um, so the Fallacis and Californicus will go after all the spider mites and broad mites, and then the oxys will go after uh, the same spider mites, but also russets. So you're getting the top mite pests and some thrip protection as well.
So it's cool that you have those combo packs, and you with when it comes to predator mites, to you it seems like the biodiversity is kind of uh, something that's embraced, and they work together like that. So check those out too. I think that that's
They,
key.
they they stay out of each other's way. Um, they'll like if they're stuck in the same bottle for too long, Californicus will eat everything else, including Persimilis. So if you ever get offered Persimilis and any other predatory mite, uh, it's always going to be the other one that's going to be left. Because Persimilis, even though they eat the most, uh, they they get pushed around by all the other species. Um, yeah, those combo that, and then we also do a Fallacis and Californicus combo that when it's warm during the day and then gets colder at night, uh, the Fallacis will take over once it gets colder, and then Californicus will when it gets too hot for the Fallacis, like if it does get in the 90s and gets down to like 50 at night, uh, that's a great time to use both or the combo.
Lots of really good, heavy information. I hope people listening and re-listening to this can get some of those nuggets. And if you guys ever have questions, we will share Andrew's shout out. You can always reach out to us as well, because like I said, we're proud to carry Andrew's products. We've actually, I was just telling him before the show, and I don't want to curse anything, but I've never had a callback with any of the products that he offers. So just know that money spent on those predators is money well spent, especially if you can't fuck around. Pardon my French, but if you're really looking to knock the problem out, consider the source. And a domestic source is always better. So let's
Thank you.
Sorry,
I appreciate that.
we got into deep convo there, but let's get into some community questions here. Brian, you want to take them away?
Yeah, we got a lot of them here, and I would imagine, Andrew, if you chose to, sir, we could have you come back and probably talk about specifics. A lot of us in the
Sure.
early days, we didn't have, we just had forums basically, and so the information that was given was almost like telephone, like when you were a little kid. So one person would say something, they would echo it, and then 6 months later, to be like, "Holy shit, you didn't have spider mites, dude! You had russet mites." And I think that's where a lot of this like if I got russet mites, I need to burn the village. And I personally went through that when I was growing in the early days. And so to have this information and not waste a lot of information, I know I've spent thousands of dollars on beneficial, especially when I started reading Jeff Lowenfeld's books and stuff. And I felt like it was wasted. And especially listening to you today, I probably bought a lot of the wrong predatory mites from my environment being here in Colorado. So for our listeners, for our little Friday night dork crew, this is something special in my opinion because growing cannabis is relatively easy. Growing great elite cannabis obviously takes a skill set, and then this is what I'm talking about. It takes a very elite grower to then protect that plant and have a perpetual harvest that month after month, year after year is getting better and better because that's the whole point of doing all of this. And I think that's where these beneficials really come in. That's where the information that Andrew's giving you, guided by Mark today, is invaluable in my opinion if you're brand new to this stuff because you can basically go to pretty close to the finish line without all of the noise and buying the ladybugs from your high-end garden center that's bullshit and getting some of even the praying mantis satchels from that kind of plug is also usually bullshit because you need the praying mantis at a certain level. So I just wanted to highlight all of that for people that are newer to this. A lot of fantastic information was given and shared. So Andrew, we got you on the hot seat here, sir. Big E, would it be Occidentalis for a desert environment?
Yes.
All right.
So, but the application rate varies depending on how big your plants are. If you're in the desert, like in your indoors or in a greenhouse, do you have a wet wall? All that stuff. But if outdoor in the desert, Occidentalis for sure.
This is kind of more of a, like, I guess, a highlighting, but from Green Table Gardens. So just throw a topic out there. I'd love to hear about the red whirling mites. Not sure on the name. They just destroyed my thrips and helped with fungus gnats as well.
Whirligig mites, they're relatively new to the scene, and they're really cool little bugs. Like I've seen them actually like bite aphids' heads off, and like they're actual consumers. Predatory mites don't actually consume the bugs; they suck their guts out, and they just throw it away. But the whirligigs actually consume the pests, and they have their place. Like they have a wide range of their pest palette, but their pest palette also includes other whirligig mites. So you can't really depend on them completely, but they do have a really if you have some in your yard, then the larger pests that predators don't go after, like aphids, they will take care of business.
With those,
I've never seen them go after fungus gnats, though. But that's not to say they don't.
I was going to ask that because do you think that those mites would play nice with rove beetles, the red whirligig mite?
I don't know. That sounds like something we should check
play
on.
Around. All right.
Are they soft-bodied? They're a soft-bodied mite, I would assume.
Whirligigs?
Yeah, they're a mite, so they're
I
soft-bodied.
believe so. Yeah.
The rove beetle's got a hard body, so I feel like a rove might. Although I will say that Stratiolaelips mites seem to win in a battle between roves and Stratiolaelips when they're in a cage match.
Stratios are badasses. Like I've seen them like go through some serious weather and storage. Even I had a bottle in my cooler in my fill room for like 4 weeks. It was an ideal environment for storage, and it was still alive. Like, they're hardy, and
When we
I don't
have
know of anything better than that for fungus gnat larvae. Uh, but
That's what the old school people talk about Hypiosis miles, correct? It just changed up the name.
yeah, the nerds didn't have anything better to do, so they changed the name.
So all you guys that are maybe a little bit older, the H miles, all of the forum talk, we're all saying the same thing here. Just wanted to clarify that.
They got the V on the back, like the brown. Yeah,
This
those
next
are clutch.
This next question is from Kevin. So I was going to read the question, and if Kevin, you wanted to highlight anything there, but he was asking the specific bean you use for spider mites. This is more for the audience there. I know you answered it behind the scenes.
Lima beans. We go from seed to harvesting the spider mites off of the plants in 10 or 11 days. So lima beans like the weather that we grow in. They like the same weather that spider mites reproduce really fast in, and they germinate super fast. So I've tried all the different types of beans, and lima seems to be the best.
Kevin, you got anything to add to that, bud?
he might be frozen.
Mogul's pretty tough, so he's being a trooper today, just being. All right, from Big E, how long after knockdown sprays should predators be applied? And I would imagine for a lot of that, it's more like Korean natural farming knockdown, not just Eagle 20 type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends on which knockdown you're talking about. But
let's assume
are you talking
it's a
about the
bad
water?
one. Well, let's assume it's a bad
okay.
one. Let's assume it's a bad one, like
Bad one.
pyrethrin or some heavy oils or whatever.
Okay, so the way the oils work is they clog. Okay, so spider mites respirate through pores in their feet and their legs, and the oils clog those pores, and it causes them to suffocate. But it doesn't do anything to the eggs, because the eggs are they look glossy under the microscope. So they just hatch right out. And then predatory mites do the same thing. And so it harms the predators the same way that it harms the spider mites. Again, it doesn't really do much to the eggs. So if you're going to use sprays, I don't know, oils, I think, can have a more detriment effect to like the native population of predators, if you have any. But also, like, the residue sticks around for a few days, like even with water rinses, which I recommend. If you're going to use like a contact killer, then rinse the plants with water to dilute some of the residue, so it's not sticking. Like, you physically wash it, so it runs it off, so the predators don't get stuck in it. And contact killers, like sulfur or azadirachtin, I think that's the one. But 48 hours, I would go with those, and also a water rinse as well. And be careful where the water is going to. It could drip down, get in your soil too. But yeah, it depends on which spray you use.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables to this, but this is a nice little, like, a 1 hour kind of entry level class, I guess, 101. So from Mr. Rusty Nails, this is a gentleman that's a big fan of our show here, Andrew. What kind of food can you use to supplement bad bugs so rogue beetles and pirate bugs stay around once the job is done?
To supplement, you mean the good bugs?
I think he's
because
asking like
the plants are the food source for the
he's asking like how do you supplement the pest, like the food source of the rove beetle and the pirate bug, like a standing
Oh, okay.
army approach, I guess.
Uh, Road beetles, I'm not so sure, and pirate bugs, those are not my wheelhouse. But I assume, uh, well, predators can live off of pollen, and like cattail pollen is a good one. Um, they don't. It's not good for them, but they will survive, and they can reproduce minimally. So if you if you cattail pollen and uh, that's really all that I know of
Yeah, I
without
don't.
adding pests
Yeah, so um,
or mold mites.
yeah, so mold mites are like or other soil-based mites, just soft-bodied non-predatory soil-based organisms the rove beetles will feed on. So they'll feed on springtails, they'll feed on mold mites, orbitid mites, all the minutia, microorganism stuff that's smaller than them and soft-bodied. So they can sustain pretty well on that stuff, but you obviously don't want, like, if you're in living soil, you kind of want all that stuff around. So we sell a product that I call Benny Boost, but it's non-GMO sprouted barley, corn, lentils, wheat bran, and oats. So it's basically a food source for all those other mites that will help to cycle nutrients, but also feed your rove beetles. So um, whether or not the roves physically are feeding on the Benny Boost or just on the bugs that are coming,
It attracts food for them.
it attracts food, and that's what will help your rove beetles
That's
boom.
that's
Um,
good.
I've heard on I don't not an expert with pirate bugs, but I've heard that there's like it's for some species of trying to it's called like a standing army approach where you have like a food source that's wingless, or something like that, like you were saying, introducing a pest or something that's immobile that they can feed on. There might be something like that, but pirate bugs are one of those ones that just they will, if there's pests around, they'll eat them, and then there's like nothing else for them to do indoors, so they just kind of die off. Outdoors, they'll just move on. So the goal there is to an ecosystem that pirate bugs want to come to, whether that's planting bankers so that there's shit for them to eat somewhere else away, or
Yes.
stuff like that. So stuff to consider with those, um, but different class than the predatory mites, I think.
Yeah, they're not. I think they're considered insects. Mites are mites. So yeah,
Well, certainly
you know
scientifically a
more about
different
that
class. Yeah.
than I do.
Another question from Stone Mason. What would be the best predator to kill symphyllin? I have no idea how to say all this. In outdoor beds.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. I actually tried to Google search that. I saw it and it came up with syphilis. So
Yikes!
yeah. So we're not
That
going.
was
I
a
don't want my
previous.
wife to. I don't want my wife to see my search history and have some. No,
Oh
is
my
this the
god.
question? Sorry, Stone Mason. If you can clarify, maybe we can get to it here.
Yeah, or educate us. That's the whole point of this too.
Yeah.
For
All
sure.
right, Rusty Nails. I love wasps and dragonflies for outdoor pest control. Uh, I let a wasp nest get big, and they have lots of babies to feed. They are awesome. So I just wanted to put that out there. That sounds like more from experience.
I like to let
Yeah.
I grow a heavy calendula for my cover crop because I just have reseeding annual calendula, and up until like transition, like which is right about now, I like to leave those flowers growing right up into the underbelly of my plants just so that it pulls those predatories in there. It's just something else cool to watch and check out. And then I chop it back for flowers so we don't have anybody touching, and clean it all up, and yeah, food for the
I,
soil.
I I really liked what you do, and that was like I've never asked someone to be a distributor before, but I was scrolling through your page and found you and texted you because I wanted someone like you to offer my predators. And before, when you were asking about indoor growing, a lot of people, even if they've been growing for like 10, 20 years indoors, bringing more bugs into the grow is counterintuitive, like completely. So having a living ecosystem within your grow area, I think that's a really important thing. And I think regenerative farming and like your kind of ecosystems, I think if more of the America, if more of the large farms grew like that, as opposed to monocropping, I think we wouldn't have to worry about our bees or our topsoil. Like we overall healthier population, and our land would be healthier.
That's the goal of this show, is just trying to and also simplifying it, because there's a way that the organic gardening has been built up into this confusing, specific instructional driven thing, which you know, depending on what philosophy of thought, whether it's KNF or Jadam or salt based, whatever, it's confusing. So breaking it down to try to make it simplified is really important. And appreciate your patience with the questions, because I know that you're spending a lot of your day looking under a microscope. You're doing this on a different level, which we should have. Do you have a scope that can connect to a computer?
I do.
Is it
not
even
with
possible?
me though.
No, of course.
Yeah.
But for a part 2, would it even be possible to get that under a scope? That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I have it has an HDMI out, so I can hook it up to whatever monitor I'm talking to, and then I can record it or just display it. It's a Leica, I think it's 720p, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about this show. I mean, you have Kevin, who's kind of been mute because he's traveling, and normally not the case, because he has a lot of great information to share. But his whole philosophy is using what you got, using the things that you have, embracing nature, and simplifying the process as much as possible, and sharing it in a palatable way. So it's a great platform. And Brian, we were talking before this, and Stratiolaelips, or H miles, whatever you want to call them, and rove beetles now, because since Brian and I have teamed up, we've brought an application for rove beetles and H miles to Bioactive. But there's also, like, even preceding us, and very, like, forums, back to the forums again. If you search deep H miles or Stratiolaelips and Bioactive, and they're using different terminology, not even Bioactive, they use these and have been using H miles or Stratiolaelips for parasitic mites on snakes.
I have heard that.
Yeah, they've been using that for a long time.
It's not
bro science. Yeah, it's not bro science. It's actually been used,
no.
But it's not talked about at all. I don't think that the reptile lobby wants us. Yeah, they don't want you to hear about that kind of stuff. So
the chemical lobby.
Yeah.
The agrochemicals are. They're the same companies that are in pharma. So, like Bayer is one of the biggest agriculture chemical companies.
Yep,
So,
they make aspirin. They make
gross.
aspirin, and they make food for your.
They make neonicotinoids.
Yeah. Yep.
Out of respect for your time, we got 2 questions left, Andrew. So this one's from Rusty. What about trichogramma flies for moth control?
I've heard lots of good things about trichogramma. Moths, I'm not sure. I know for caterpillars, BT can be used, but I've never used trichogramma, but I have people that swear by it. Same thing with Bavaria bassiana.
And the only thing I say with Bavaria bassiana, I promote, and I don't carry it, and I'm not singular to anything, but Botanicard WP22 is a domestically bred strain of Bavaria. So goes back to domestic, kind of sticking to the country, man.
With living things, yeah, you don't want to transport.
Yeah, and it boils down to that, really, truly. And also, we have a different climate here in this country as well. Maybe not drastically different, but yeah, it boils down to transit time. Sorry. Last question.
Yeah, and
root
Kevin,
aphids. Bavaria bassiana is really good for root aphids. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I wanted to try to get Kevin in here. I saw that the video was working. We tried to throw it over to you with a couple of questions, lima bean question and stuff. So if you wanted to add anything, and then
yeah. So
with
I was,
this last question.
hopefully it comes through. But yeah, I was wondering, like whenever we talk about mites, spider mites, and all the different range of lists of mites there are there specific characteristics that we would see, and probably it'd have to be under a microscope, but number of legs or body shape, antenna, are there anything that give it away to you? Something you say, okay, yeah, that's a mite because I see what?
That's a good question. So spider mites look a lot different than predatory mites. But predators, you can tell, like they're about the same size as an adult spider mite. But predators, no matter what species they are, they're fast. They come screaming by. You can always look at the eggs, the difference in the shapes of the eggs. Spider mite eggs are perfectly round, and then predator eggs look more like a chicken egg. They're more oblong. So that's one of the things you look for is shells, like a deflated basketball. I say that because they spider mite eggs turn more orange, gold as they get older. But if they're deflated, and then there's predator eggs around, that means the predators are doing their job. Even if you didn't see the predators scream by, then it means that they was eating and reproducing. They're just, by the time you grabbed a leaf and brought it up to your eye, they're on the other side of the leaf. But spider mites and the pest mites, they have like textbook damage. So even if you don't have a loop, which I suggest everybody get a 10 to 30x jeweler's loop. They're like $15 on Amazon. I've seen them for cheaper. And you'll be able to see even russet mites if you look. If there's not just one russet mite, then because the russet mites are much smaller than spider mites or predatory mites, and so are broad mites. Anyways, scouting with a loop will confirm the damage that you see on the leaves. Spider mites, it starts with yellow. It's called stippling, but it's like little yellow dots. Normally on the inside of the on the top part of the leaf, it looks yellow because there's spider mites from the underside sucking the chlorophyll out. So they suck the green out. That's why there's yellow left. And then it starts to spread, and then you get webbing. And then broad mites and russet mites, they cause the fingers of the leaves to start to bend upwards from the inside vein. So tacoing, and then that's more russets, and then broad mites. It causes like torsion within the fingers of the leaves, as opposed to just bending upward. They look wonky.
So it
You
takes
need
a
to make
trained eye.
you need to make a poster of that, man. You need to make a poster of what you just explained, because there'd be plenty of people buy something like that. Because it's just like what people need is a picture reference. Okay, I've got these spikes right here. It's kind of the leaf is looking like this. I'm sure there's probably something out there, but that was a great explanation, Andrew. You're full of knowledge, dude. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I have pretty good pictures on my Instagram, but yeah, you're right. I should put it together into like a single
Infographic.
photo. Yeah, infographic. That's it. That's the word.
All right, out of respect of everybody's time, we do try to keep this to an hour, and that's what I was saying. We would love to have you back, Andrew, to kind of break these down into things like Kevin was kind of alluding to with an infographic. A lot of people have been burned, especially kind of the older guard, and so if you could re-educate the community, I think they'd be willing to try it again. It's just some of the brands, even that Mark had mentioned, I've personally used and felt like I got swindled. I felt like I was buying Swarovskis out the Yahoo, you know, especially in the early commercial days, trying to explain this to the CPA types of why we need to be spending all this money. And hindsight, especially after hearing you today, sir, probably was wasting a lot of money buying some of these things in those early days.
And that's kind of the war that I'm having right now is against the rest of the entire industry, because they're giving us a bad name by giving poor quality, or you know, it's more of a gimmick type thing, like ladybugs.
Yeah, that's a gimmick. Let's let Kevin start off first here in case we lose him, because it does seem to be working. You got some deals and stuff going on this week, Kevin?
Yeah, we got some few genetics on sale at okcalixshop.com. Go check that out, okcalixshop.com. And then October 19th is the autumn hands-on immersive class in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. You can go to growcastpodcast.com to check all that out. Andrew, once again, thank you very much.
Nice meeting you. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I hope that people understand how unique it is to be able to talk to the owner slash biologist slash bug feeder, the guy doing it all at an operation that it really seems, from, I don't know about everybody else, but for the longest time, it's like this mysterious shrouded industry, right? And it doesn't, we just know it kind of
Yeah,
doesn't
they're shady.
work. We just know it doesn't work. You don't really know where the stuff's actually coming from or what it is. You don't really know how to use it. You don't know how much you need, stuff like that. So it is a special opportunity to have you for an hour to be able to hit you with some of these questions that I have, because you're a busy man, I'm a busy man. It's hard for us to connect, and to be able to do it here live for everybody is really awesome. So my hat's off to you for all the info you've shared with us tonight. It's really useful for me, and I hope it's useful for everybody listening. And not a whole lot going on my side. I have some new springtail species coming down the pipe, but other than that, check us out. I redid the site recently, so it's a new immersive experience into soil biology. So please check it out, mibeneficials.com. And should we flip it over to Andrew? How can we? Or actually, let's go to Brian, and then we'll finish with you, Andrew.
Sure.
Again, just kind of behind the scenes, raising my 4 children, kind of the same way with Kevin, quietly trying to do that, as well as build a business. So for everybody that's been supporting Rubber Ducky Isopods and Terrarium Tribe, we appreciate it. We see it. We see it in the way that you guys talk about us on social media, and we see it in the sales that you guys provide us each and every week. So just I can't thank everybody enough. It is a grind, and then we are happy to do it. And this educational platform, I think, goes a long way. And I think people that are newer to maybe some of this social media selling, I think people would be amiss to see sometimes what can be done when your brand, especially your family-owned brand, becomes a national brand from just like a local or local brand. it's life changing. So we want to highlight that for everybody out there. Thank you.
Right on.
Andrew, how can we find you other than that? And yeah, do you have anything to plug?
Benamite.com. Biotactics is biotactics.com is a fishery up in Canada. Benamite is our trademark. Predators reared by Biotactics using our system are called Benamites. So Benamite Persimilis or Benamite Californicus. Anything you see with Benamite on it, that's coming from us. MI Beneficials offers all the species that we have. Benamite.com, and I will be I'm actually going up to Medford on Sunday, so I'll be there from Sunday to Thursday doing site visits with the help of BCS and Alex at in Phoenix, Oregon. So you can DM me if you're in the area and want me to come.
Medford, Oregon, guys. That's a pretty cool opportunity. So shoot him a DM. He'll come show up. And this is a person who actually cares. So really appreciate.
I'm also I have a 3-year-old and I'm married and I take care of my parents. Biotactics allows me to do all of that. So I do want to thank everybody, and remind everybody that I have 4 employees. So when you're trying to decide whether you want to get Persimilis from $500 million insectary or the guy down the road, think about that.
Just like us, guys. Family owned to operated, and he's here with us tonight. So thank you so much for your time, Andrew, Kevin, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, love you guys. And until next week, guys, hope everybody stays safe and keep it organic.